Hi there, I'm Cotton and welcome to Cottonhammer. Today we are gonna look at a special character and one of my personal favorites, Endryd Haar. So, what's so special about him? Well, you probably read the title, so you should have figured that out by now. So, without further faffing about, let's follow the sounds of thunder and take a look at Endryd Haar. So, who is Endryd Haar? The first time we hear about Endryd Haar, who is also known as the Riven Hound, is years before the start of the Great Crusade. He was among the very first initiates recruited into the first company of the 12th Legion. This legion would later be known as the Warhounds, and decades later, after being forcefully reunited with Angry One, would be renamed again to the World Eaters. But at this point in the story, we are still firmly on Terra. Here the first mystery shows up. While many future Astartes from Terra are recruited from specific regions, like for example the original Dusk Raiders, later Death Guard, being all from Albia. Small side note, Albia refers to Albion, meaning that the original Death Guard were British. Oi, cuff cuff, in it! But in the case of Endryd, he seems to have just one day shown up in the gene works under the Imperial Palace and they just slapped some organs into him. The reason for this is because Haar was already modified before even becoming an Astartes, and to hide his origin from his brother Astartes. Though several apothecaries that had a closer look at him did notice that his Astartes implants came much later than his other modifications. But they couldn't really hide his physical attributes. Not only was Haar much stronger and even faster than a regular Astartes, he was also massive. He would even dwarf modern day Primaris, who are already a foot taller than the original Astartes. He was so huge in fact, that apothecaries were actually speculating what the hell they did with him in the gene works. Much later in the Crusade, even Fabius Bile would comment on it. Though he dismissed Haar as some proto-Astartes, just a brute early concept work that somehow survived. Not even worthy of being called a full Astartes, which obviously must mean he's inferior to the fine and perfected mold of future space marines. Oh Fabius, you silly Billy full of cope. Endryd Haar himself, as a person was, well, he fit right in with the Warhounds. He was extremely aggressive, quick to anger, and had a really bad temper. And he had the bulk and strength to back it all up. Which many of the Blackshields that followed him later would find out the hard way when they dared to hesitate in following one of his commands. But he was also very intelligent and had a keen eye for details. Endryd also has a very twisted sense of loyalty. To the Emperor, yes, but mostly to himself and to his values. He values duty and oaths above all else. But when your only loyalty is to your own goals, noble as they may be, then both loyalists and heretics can become a problem. And Endryd knew only of a single way on how to deal with problems.
Fucking heretics!
Even his war gear that he uses throughout his endeavors reflects that he is from a more forgotten time. His main weapons are a Terra pattern gauntlet, a mastercrafted power fist forged on Terra. He also carries a Archaeotech las pistol as his sidearm. Don't let the name fool you, this is nothing like the las pistols that are mass produced today. It's able to punch clean through power armor with a single shot, as many of both Endryd's enemies and followers have found out. His own set of armor he uses later in his story is a Mark V Heresy set, which is cobbled together from parts of his old World Eaters armor and parts he scavenged. He also uses an Iron Halo, which generates a conversion field around him to add an additional layer of protection. It's how he gets away with not wearing a helmet. Our first account of just how terrifying Endryd Haar was came during the Cerberus Insurrection. Cerberus, the asteroid prison colony, had been overrun by its inmates. leaving all guards and personnel stationed there as little more than stains on the walls. In reaction to this, the Emperor personally sent the 12th Legion, now known as the Warhounds, to deal with it. Why would you ever need a full Astartes Legion to deal with just some rowdy prisoners? Valid question, until you learn that Cerberus was a prison not just for the worst criminals, but also a significant number of Thunder Warriors. Those Thunder Warriors had organized themselves into a renegade group, calling themselves the Endryd Haar. When the Warhounds made planetfall, or well, asteroidfall I guess, they met very little resistance on the upper levels, having to deal mostly with just a bunch of ragtag human prisoners. That mood of battle soon shifted when they encountered the first Thunder Warriors deeper into the colony complex. The dark and narrow tunnels turned every fight into a one-on-one, the Astartes being unable to outflank or surround the Thunder Warriors. Astartes were literally ripped apart limb from limb by the vastly stronger and also faster Thunder Warriors. But with just crude weaponry and barely any supplies to speak of, the Thunder Warriors were slowly overwhelmed by concentrated bolter fire. The only exception to this being Endryd Haar, who was spotted engaging with Thunder Warriors in melee and besting them. The fighting was so brutal that not even weapons were used. Haar broke the neck of one Thunder Warrior and broke the back of another, though every Thunder Warrior that fell was surrounded by at least half a dozen mutilated Astartes corpses. When Malcador later speaks with Endryd Haar about this event, he mentions how the Endryd Haar were Endryd's brothers, though Endryd sneers at this, stating that they are brothers no more, since those Thunder Warriors defied the Emperor's will. By the time that the Warhounds were, forcefully, reunited with Angron, Endryd Haar had become a praetor of the 12th Legion. A praetor is comparable to a chapter master in modern chapters, each leading 1,000 Astartes into battle. He absolutely despised Angron, even stating later that the Emperor should have just granted Angron's wish and let him die with his gladiators. When the time came that the butcher's nails were introduced, Endryd Haar refused them. While his story would have been chain-axed short at this point by Angron for refusing, Malcador sent him and his entire company on a special mission to the edges of the galaxy, before Angry One could ask him a question. During this secretive mission, all contact with the Imperium was cut off. It is unknown what their task was, and if they achieved this. They are called Forgotten Crusades for a reason, I guess. When Endryd Haar returned back to the Imperium, decades later, the Horus heresy had already broken out, unknown to Endryd or his fellow World Eaters. This caused the Loyalists to, unceremoniously, take them prisoner, and ship them off to Terra's high security prison, Kangba Marwu. Endryd Haar was completely overtaken by rage and hatred for his gene father Angron, but mostly Horus. Angron was just another chained dog in Endryd's eyes, and while he would also want to see him dead, his main goal was Horus, who he blamed, rightfully, for destroying everything he and his brothers had bled for. Endryd broke out of Kangba Marwu in a brutal display of his strength, tearing not only his cell apart, but also his fellow prisoners that refused to aid him, and even other Astartes stationed there to guard the prison. There is even a rumor that he killed a custodes during his escape. But when asked about this, Endryd pretends he does not remember. The one asking was a dirty traitor interrogating him, so make of that what you will. He made it off-world with a few other renegade marines that were imprisoned, starting a career as renegade raiders, hunted both by the Loyalists and the traitors. At this point, Endryd was the very last of his company to still be alive. It is unknown if they were killed by Loyalists, died on the Forgotten Crusade, or perished during the breakout. However, Endryd's goal hadn't changed. Horus must die, and he would be the one to do it. And he would sacrifice as many people, Loyalist or traitor, as it would require.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
He organized a small renegade warband, called the Fangs of the Emperor, comprised of fellow Blackshields of both loyal and traitor legions, some of which he would literally collect from battlefields where they lay wounded and dying, abandoned by their former brothers. Endryd didn't care where their loyalties lay, as long as they would aid him in his goal to kill Horus, which created a bit of a weird dynamic, since this wasn't a merry-go-lucky band of Astartes misfits sailing through the galaxy. Nope, almost everyone in that warband hated Endryd almost as much as he hated them. But the alternative to following Endryd was being left alone in a burning galaxy where both loyalist and traitor guns were aimed at them. At least this way they could use Endryd's massive frame for cover. Endryd started his plan by capturing the Sons of Horus cruiser Cicatrice Tyrannus. They used this to pose as Sons of Horus and infiltrated the minor forge world of Xana Tesiphone. This forge world was offering a trio of Ordinatus Ulators. These are basically mobile sonic destructor weapons, able to kill thousands of people and level entire city blocks, which the Magos happily demonstrated on just as many of his labor prisoners. Endryd had planned to capture these to blow Horus the fuck up. A simple plan, but that just increases the chances that it might work, I guess. His plan got interrupted when loyalists of the Dark Angels showed up to prevent the War Master from acquiring these weapons, though he did manage to save 2 of them, and he slipped into Malcador's DMs when an infiltrated Calidus assassin revealed himself to him. Malcador offered him to work for him in a more organized fashion, and offered a guarantee that loyalists would stop shooting at him. But Endryd Haar was still kinda salty that old Malky had locked him up in that prison. That, and he was 99% sure that his proposed mission of YOLOing right at Horus with 2 Ordinatus weapons and then hoping that Horus's face catches one of them would not get approved. So why even bother? He then went to Duat. Duat was a master world for the World Eaters, barely guarded since Angron had withdrawn most troops used for garrison duty to bolster his numbers for battle. A prime target for the Fangs of the Emperor, both to loot supplies and to maybe even bolster their own numbers if they could snatch up a few of those recruits not yet indoctrinated fully. Endryd used his old codes from his World Eater days to arrange a safe landing. However, instead of fresh new recruits, he discovered that the lone apothecary, who he had hoped to recruit to his cause, was busy making vile mutants, gene crafting the little gene seed he had to work with to its absolute limits, creating unstable monsters rather than warriors. When both an Iron Hands and a World Eaters fleet showed up in system, it was time to go. Endryd killed the apothecary and the abominations. After this encounter, and realizing just how far the traitors would go in their quest to see the galaxy burn, he took Malcador up on his offer and started working for Malcador himself, much to his chagrin. Endryd took every, and I mean every mission that Malcador offered him, even if they were labeled as self-unalive missions. His death would be a good one, as long as he died slaughtering traitors. In one of his missions, he and his tech marine let themselves get captured to infiltrate a Sons of Horus ship that was tracking them since a while now. While imprisoned, a Sons of Horus apothecary reveals a lot of secrets about him. He notices how his Astartes implants have been added much later to his other augmentations. And he also notices a Raptor Imperialis tattoo. While several Astartes from Terra also have this tattoo, the apothecary, correctly, determines that his tattoo is actually also older than his Astartes implants. And realizing just what Endryd Haar is, he asks him if he fought alongside the Emperor, which Endryd confirms, right before breaking free and smashing that apothecary's face into mush. Despite surviving every mission thrown at him, his death would finally catch up to him during the siege of Terra. He was sent down under the Saturnine Gate, together with several other kill teams made up of other members of Malcador's Chosen, to fight the Sons of Horus that had sent full companies underground to try and bypass the Saturnine Gate. The climax of this battle happened when Abaddon led his entire first company of Cataphracti Terminators in a teleport assault, which was wiped out in about 10 minutes. Abaddon found himself alone, and after fending off attacks from Gavia Loken and killing Belcepatus, he had to deal with Endryd Haar. However, despite how much you dislike the guy, Abaddon is still a master swordsman and quickly outmatched Endryd, delivering a fatal wound, which did absolutely nothing to stop Endryd. Endryd launched his full weight at Abaddon, pummeling him with his power fist again and again, reducing his helmet to scrap metal. All the while, Abaddon kept frantically stabbing at Endryd, delivering blow after blow that each would have killed any space marine. Just as his head lay bare and one final punch of Endryd's power fist would connect with Abaddon's bare face, he managed to thrust his sword upwards, up Endryd's throat, through his brain and out the back of his skull. But even in death, Endryd was not done with Abaddon. The lifeless and massive corpse of Endryd slumped over him and pinned him in place, unable to move, and he could only look helplessly as Loken approached with his sword up high and swung down. And of course he gets teleported away at the last second. See, this is why people despise Abaddon. He's such a bitch that gets bested again and again and again, only to be saved by plot armor thicker than Terra's walls. It's embarrassing. So, this is where the story of Endryd Haar ends. The Thunder Warrior that fought not only through the Unification War and the Great Crusade, but even fought till almost the very end of the Horus Heresy. While his methods might be questionable, he was without a doubt one of the most loyal Space Marines to have ever lived. Till his last breath, he fought for the Emperor. And for the Emperor he fought both loyalist and traitor, only caring if they stood in his way to deliver justice to those who had betrayed Big E. There is also the implications. Why did Big E save him? Did he try to save all the Thunder Warriors at one point? And why does Endryd despise his former brothers? Was the massacre of the Thunder Warriors justified after all? Did the Emperor offer all of them the chance to become Astartes, and they were insulted they would be replaced by these new, compared to them, weaklings? I might do a separate video on this down the line in the far future, but that will be mostly theory crafting. Anyway, thank you for watching. Endryd Haar is one of my personal favorites, and I was excited to make a video on him and try and do him justice. Hence why this video does not have my usual amount of cringy jokes in it.
Oh, thank God!
I hope you liked it. If you did, then please leave a like, share the video so other people learn about the Thunder Warrior that tried to kill Horus. And subscribe if you want to learn more about overlooked characters like him in the future. Anyway, thanks again for watching and see y'all next time. Cheers!